And this video is about our 3 top tips for implementing a local search campaign. You've probably all heard about it, you've probably all read about it, but in September 2018, the CEO of Google actually announced that local search was the biggest search category in terms of growth for Google. With almost 50% of searches now local, local search is really becoming a lot more important to the strategy of most companies that we meet. But one of the things they always ask is, okay, so if we're going to set up a local search campaign, what are the 3 things you'd advise us to do? So I'm planning in this video is just to give you some tips that you can use yourself to, when you're setting up your local search campaign, to make sure you know some of the pitfalls that you might see. So the first things first is, and I always say this to every customer, is you've got to track the click to sale. The issue you've got with local search is that 71% of people call as part of the transaction. Now, that's Google stats. Our own stats, we think it's more like 80%, but the issue you've got straight away is that you're taking that online click to an offline environment with a call. Now, it's great that you can see the click to call, which there's a lot of call tracking software out there at the moment that does that. But in terms of actually measuring the click to call to sale, why is that important? Well, you can actually end up generating a hell of a lot of calls into your call center, but actually not getting any sales. Now, that's a huge waste of resource, huge waste of marketing time and marketing budget. And without doing that end-to-end analysis, actually, how can you optimize your campaign so it drives real revenue and real profit? And what I mean by that is this slide here. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to see. It's not the biggest in the world, but I've mentioned this before in that you've got a key term here, which is unblocked drain, driving lots and lots of calls. But from a revenue point of view, which unblocked drain is there, it's actually driving very little. Unblocked drains, the plural, as you can see here, driving 20% less calls, but it's driving 2/3 more revenue. And what we often find in local search is it's almost counter to what you would do on a brand campaign or a national campaign. It's not necessarily about the keywords that actually drive sales or traffic. It's actually the keywords that don't drive any revenue at all. And it's about getting a negative keyword list right and actually stopping the keywords that don't drive value for you is really where a lot of low-hanging fruit is. But if you're not tracking that click to sale, you're really only going to have part of the puzzle, really. And it's one of the reasons why we developed eSales Hub technology, because when I was working for other businesses like Halfords or Hilton Hotels, I could see I was generating calls, I could see, I was getting clicks, but actually were those calls leading to sales? And at the end of the day, call centers aren't cheap to run. There's only a finite amount of resource, and if you can be sure that actually the quality of lead that you're driving is very, very high, you're not going to need as much resource or dedicated resource to answer those calls and get sales. So that's definitely tip number 1 from us is getting that end-to-end view. Now, the second tip is to use data to affect bidding for increased financial performance. Well, I mean, that's a pretty long sentence, but what do we mean by that? Well, if you've got the sales data, if you know what are your best converting keywords, use that financial information to drive your bidding performance. Because again, what you'll find is, and particular location strategy, you will find pockets of locations, of keywords. You'll find differences for keywords in Scotland as opposed to Wales, as opposed to England. You've got a lot of data. And essentially what you're going to end up is in a general campaign, you might be running 150 keywords for a brand campaign or a product campaign. Times that by the amount of locations that you're targeting, and you're talking about 20,000 keywords that you're going to manage. Now, that's pretty tough to do. It's pretty tough to do manually. Which is why when you look at what you need to be targeting, as you can see here, the example, if you're just targeting mortgages and you're using 1-word phrases, pretty easy to manage. Using 2 to 3-word phrases starts to get a little bit more complex. You get more descriptive phrases, you're looking at 20,000 keywords that you've got to manage on a location level through multiple locations. that it isn't easy to do. And when you look at the kind of click to sale analysis and the amount of data that you're tracking, so you've got your local search intent, which is about 46%. You know, at eSales Hub, we generate on average a 5.3% click-through rate. Our average page conversion is around 34. And we generate leads that generate, in average, a 1 in 3 sales conversion. So there's a lot of data there. But the key that we find is, and the real differentiator that we find, is actually that our analytics tool has all of that data, but then uses that data, pushing it back into Google, so you've got actionable insights that can enhance your bidding on an hourly, daily, weekly level. And really what it's about is using that data to define your bidding over a very, very broad section of keywords. So these are just some of the parameters that we use by location, position, time of day, time to payday, demographics, device users. You know, some keywords behave differently on a mobile versus ad versus local or natural search. You know, click-through rate, even, you know, different days for different categories, different industries. Weekends are better than midweek, and it's vice versa. So you've got lots and lots of data points that if you can track those and put that information back into Google Ads, you're going to end up with a way, way better optimized campaign. But the final tip, and this one really is important, is 71% of people call as part of the local search as part of a transaction. So Google say, we think it's a little bit higher, we think it's about 80, but whatever you do, you're only as good as the person answering the phone. You've got to get set up for selling. If your call center can't answer the phone, if they have a hold time of 6 minutes, if their conversion's really, really poor, whatever you do, unless you're set up for selling, it doesn't matter how many leads you drive. It doesn't matter how much optimization you do. It doesn't matter how much an opportunity that you drive for your business. If your sales guys and your call center are not set up to take inbound calls and to sell effectively on the phone, it doesn't matter what you do, your local search strategy isn't going to work, which is why we put a lot of emphasis on making sure that each one of our clients is set up. That might be, free sales training. It might be making sure that the dialer and the call center technology is optimized at its best. But the other good thing is we have metrics. We have different industry metrics, different, what we'd expect the ring time, the talk time to be for different industries and different clients. So we've got a lot of information to industry benchmarks that we can share so that you can see, am I doing a good or bad job? But really with local search, this is the one bit that I believe is really the most important, because you can make the phone ring, that's not a problem. But to sell to it, you've got to get set up for selling. So those are our 3 tips about local search and setting up your own local search strategy. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you've got any questions for eSales Hub, please do email us. Thanks for watching the video.